Hey there, everyone. Klaudia Tirico, editor of Demand Gen Report here, and I'm back with another episode of CXO Conversations. With me today is Allie Magyar, CEO of Hubb. Hubb is a virtual conference and event management software, and they just recently unveiled some interesting findings from a new survey on virtual events. So I'm really excited to dive into some of the results and the insights from that report with Allie today. Allie, thank you so much for taking the time. It's so nice to meet you. How's it going today?
Yeah, it's great. It's great to be here. And I am so passionate. I've been my entire career inside of meetings and events. And so really excited for our discussion today.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. I mean, this topic, ever since events, like real in-person events went away last year, I feel like I've been just going down a rabbit hole of learning all new things about virtual and now the hybrid event model. So I love this topic so much. So I'm really excited to chat. But to kick things off, I'd love for you to just introduce our audience to yourself and the work you do at Hubb.
Absolutely. Well, I've been an entrepreneur my entire career since I was 18 years old. So Hubb is my third company. And all of those companies have always been in meetings and events of some type. So when I started my career, fax machines and mail were my tech. That's how I used to collect registration and manage things. And my office was filled with binders from top to bottom. But obviously things have changed over time. And I ended up growing up at Microsoft, planning and managing all of their events. So I saw technology starting to come to life. And that's when it inspired me to create technology for my own team to help automate our processes, make events more relevant, provide a better attendee experience. And so that's why I founded Hubb. And now my role at Hubb is to bring that meeting planning expertise of running some of the world's largest technology events to what our software needs, especially at this massive time of change. I mean, our entire world is changing, right? In terms of digitally, in person, what does that mean? How do we actually connect? And so it's a really exciting time to be a part of this industry.
I love that. And I love your radiant energy about it. So I already know this is going to be a really great conversation. So Hubb recently launched a survey that found a really big boost in virtual event planning expertise, which is awesome. 83% of event professionals confirmed that they have experience hosting a virtual event compared to 45% that were surveyed in 2020. So that's a huge jump right there. What have your customers learned throughout this pandemic, and what strategies should we keep moving forward into, our hybrid model per se, or, now that everything's slowly going back to in person and we might be doing, a little bit of virtual, a little bit of in person. What is that looking like for your customers?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I think it's really important last year when everything, people always asked, how is your business recession proof? But they never asked, how is your business pandemic proof?
Yeah.
And those are two totally different things, right? And the world just wasn't ready for what we experienced. And events at its core is about human connection. And it's something that we've been missing. And so as the pandemic hit last year, I think a lot of meeting planners, my phone was ringing off the hook. People were saying, what's a virtual event? It's like a 90s video game. Like, how do I actually bring an experience or human connection to this? And so there was this just huge panic as we had to think about how we needed to change up what we've always done to be in a digital environment instead of an in-person environment. And now as we're coming through the tail end of that, I think we're learning quite a few different things. But one is that there are all different types of people in this world. And part of events is creating an inclusive environment for people to succeed. And for some of those people, they don't want to travel. They don't do well in large groups of people. They get overwhelmed by lots of lights and motion and action. And so as we come into this new world, I think it's our role inside of marketing, specifically with events, to be able to create these inclusive experiences where if someone does best learn at home in their PJs consuming content, that we're allowing them to do that. And if they are people and they're the ones that are like, get me back at a networking bar and I just want to go to the party, we need to provide those experiences as well. So to me, as we think about hybrid, which is a term that not a lot of people can define right now, we have to look at that with a lot of agility, but we also have to realize that it's not one size fits all. And so we do have to look at how are we merging the digital world with the in-person world. And you can see that in our day-to-day, just in terms of how our kids are going to school and how they learn, how we learn. Look at Masterclass and all the incredible things and the new college education that they came out with as a part of it. Our world is consistently changing right now. And so we need to look at how we're functioning as humans and then bring that into our event experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really about adaptability. And that's one thing we all definitely learned all throughout last year. And I love that you said that, it's really hard to define a hybrid model these days. Just like it was hard to define a virtual event, right? I feel like in the beginning, everybody was like, oh, it's a webinar, right? But a webinar and a virtual event are totally different. And we definitely learned that as well. And I'm personally looking forward to seeing how, that definition of the hybrid model really kind of pans out. So speaking of which, with the, success and impact that virtual events had on demand gen this past year, what does that future hold? So, we have our in-person events coming back. How do you foresee planning changing when it comes to this hybrid model? What should people be really focused on when they start planning this new type of experience?
Well, to me, specifically as it relates to demand gen, there was never a better blessing than virtual events because, if we had 1,000 people at our event in person, digitally, we could have 10,000 and they could be worldwide instead of just, to a specific region that we're okay traveling. And so as we think about why we host events, so we have to go back completely to its core, it's a sales and marketing lead gen type of activity. And so my thought process around this is that the future really looks at a combined digital engagement that's year round with our customers and with our prospects, combined with moments of impact, which is that in-person element. And I hear a lot of planners saying, I'm just going back to in-person. I don't like the digital side. I don't like virtual events, but they're missing the point. That the whole reason we hold events is to create new leads, to get data on leads. The one just huge element of virtual events has been the data that we're able to get. In demand gen, we may go out and purchase a list and we end up with first name, last name, email address, and title and company. But think about hosting a digital event. Now I know who do they want to meet with? What topics are of interest to them? Did they meet with one of my experts? And if so, on what topic? You're getting that data that you need to append to that record in order to actually make movements within sales, in order to target the marketing messaging to them year round. And we don't want to miss that opportunity. So I view it as always a combined medium. And I look at it as omni-channel. That's a word that I think should rule as we think about our marketing and our events really merging. It's omni-channel experiences for our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I know I actually used to write for our sister publication, which was Retail Touchpoint. So that was all catering to the B2C world, and omni-channel, that term was so prevalent. And now it's quickly really coming up into the B2B space. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Like we have to be, everywhere our buyers are. And that includes any type of channel, whether it's in person, virtual, phone, whatever it is, fax. I don't know if people are still on faxes, but you never know. So, I mean, technology obviously plays a key role here, right? And Hubb is designed to be that single platform for all event environments, right? So what advice would you give marketers looking for a solution to really help them navigate this new world of events? And how can they get buy-in from the C-suite?
Yeah. These are things that are just top of mind in our industry right now, because I think a lot of people think of hybrid and they think I'm going to produce a separate event for virtual and a separate event for in-person, and that's hybrid. And there's definitely unique value propositions for both, but a lot of people are claiming hybrid and having the event at the same time. For example, there was an industry event that just happened where they said it's hybrid and come experience hybrid, but the virtual audience was kept completely separate from the in-person audience, and those never merged together in any way. And the tools were different, the logins were different, and we have to make things as stupid simple for attendees as possible to consume, or they're on to the next thing. I mean, we're part of the internet generation, right? If you can't keep my attention in 5 seconds, I'm on to the next thing. And so as we think about what's important as it pertains to hybrid, I'm really challenging that hybrid means that the events have to be happening at the same time. Is there a world where we look at a parity of experience where we've got a digital experience where a worldwide audience is coming together and they're getting a baseline of education, they're networking with each other, everything that we did in virtual events over the last year. But then the real value is for the in-person audience that's going to follow on to that experience. They're now able to form small group discussion about the topics that were of most interest. They're able to do peer-to-peer meetings and be able to have brainstorms with people and deep dive into the things that are going to affect their career. Can they plan out a more authentic and connected experience in person by using the digital element? And so to me, I view our digital events as a springboard to be able to create more relevant in-person experiences. And my prediction is that in the world in the future, there isn't going to be a single person that's going to say, oh yeah, let me go to this giant convention center and sit in a breakout room with 500 people for 90 minutes. It's not going to happen because we know that we can do that better sitting at home and learning what we care about. And when we're in person, we want human connection. We want experiences. We want the things that we can't get digitally reproduced at this point in time. And the value proposition is very different to those audiences as well. So I think we have to look at how do we use events as moments of impact that basically can carry us throughout that community engagement throughout the year. And after an event, I also see an opportunity to continue to engage. That digital environment can light up once a month or once a quarter with new content, new human engagement, keeping, so much of in B2B is all about keeping top of mind, right? So how do we keep top of mind with our community? We can just continue to light up these moments of impact digitally with unique experiences in person that really form that human connection. So it's totally changing.
I love that. And we talked a lot about the audience facing side of events and how we could connect with our audiences during events. But what about from that sponsor partner side? I know, specifically, Hubb has been, I'm assuming because you've sponsored our events, but you sponsor some virtual events throughout the year. And how will that hybrid model now change the dynamic when working with sponsors and exhibitors? What should companies who often sponsor physical events or specifically virtual events really consider in this hybrid model?
Yeah. When I think about the last year, one of the top topics in the events industry is sponsor and exhibitor value. And how is it that we give them value? And if we look pre-COVID, there isn't a single exhibitor that would go to a trade show floor, sit in a 10 by 10 booth, never go out into the aisleway, never go out into the event and just sit there and expect leads. And if they did, they weren't going to be very successful, right? And that's what we did in the virtual world is we said, here, go to this virtual booth and just sit there and wait for people to come to you. Well, of course, that's not going to happen in a way that brings value. The sponsored exhibitor has to do the exact same thing that I challenge my marketing team every time we go to an event. You're out there hustling. You're in the sessions. You're telling people where you're bringing a value. You're giving away white papers. You're offering free consulting. You're bringing people back to the booth for an experience. And so some of this is both on the sponsor and exhibitor for knowing how to generate leads and focus in a digital environment. And it's also on the meeting planner to create the right type of environment to allow those sponsors and exhibitors to succeed. Now, what I'm hearing a lot of is I'm just going to go back to in-person because, then they'll get, the booth traffic that they want. And I instantly roll my eyes because pre-COVID, I used to run expo floors with literally 500 exhibitors. And I can tell you, they would all complain all the time. The entire time I was on the show floor, all I was doing was listening to them say that the traffic wasn't as busy as last year, the beer was too far away from their booth, whatever, right? So these are not new problems. And I challenge that in this new world of going back in person, again, human behavior has changed. How we're willing to spend our time has changed. And I can't imagine that there's a single person that's going to want to go up to someone within 6 inches and have their badge scanned in close proximity of someone. And so I look at that and say, I've got to figure out a new way to bring sponsors and exhibitors value. Because if they're counting on people coming to their booth and getting within 6 inches to get scanned, they're not going to see the results they're looking for. And so I look at this as an opportunity to say, how do we make in-person more experiential? How do we allow those sponsors and exhibitors to use the power of the data that we have in digital experiences to be able to target specific groups of people that makes their lead gen even more powerful, to be able to then create the right experiences in person where they're hosting dinners, hosting small group discussions, getting in front of the people that they actually want to be in front of, not just the person that's coming for a t-shirt. And then digitally, how do we get them the lead volume that they're looking for? How do we manage privacy regulations and opt-ins and opt-outs in the right way to increase the lead count that then allows them to have that full marketing list and the data that they need to be able to go out and sell and market afterwards to bring value?
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I just wanted to just kind of go off track a little bit here and ask, because, you said once or twice already that you can't imagine a big expo hall anymore with 500 booths and vendors and people walking up to them at, 6 inches away and all that stuff. What do you see that looking like in the future? So do these big trade shows still have a place in B2B specifically?
They do. I mean, people like to do business with people that they like, and we have to have a way of forming relationships. So I think I think the exhibit booths will still exist. People will still come around the exhibit booth. I think we just have to be creative in terms of the lead gen for the exhibitor in that booth. How do we create safe social distancing types of experiences for people to be able to consume, have conversations, but that it's not hey, I have to get within 6 inches of you to scan a badge or get my hands near your face. So I think we have to just rethink what that floor looks like and how we create a safe space for attendees that want to explore and want to communicate. And I also think that it's a more intentional design around getting those sponsors and exhibitors actually engaged in the event. Can we up-level them with their expertise and put them into small group discussions? So I think we're just going to see this merger in terms of the real value in person is human connection. So how do we bring our sponsors and exhibitors into that experience and create a different type of space to allow everyone to be successful with that?
I love that. And it's so exciting. I find it so exciting. I'm so looking forward to, going back to in person and seeing what new creativity and new innovation that, marketers and sponsors and everybody kind of comes up with, because last year was just so amazing in seeing how creative and agile everyone was. So I hold marketers to a very high standard with this creativity. So I imagine that there's going to be some good stuff coming down the pipe for sure. What about, let's talk about measuring, the engagement. What should event planners consider now when measuring engagement of virtual and hybrid events? I know there's just there's so much data now available to them, especially in this all digital world. So what should people consider for, in order to measure and really make everything worthwhile?
Yeah, that was the struggle for so long in our industry, was the inability to use data to prove value, because events are a marker in the life cycle of a customer or a prospect. And so how do we use that information to say whether we can, decrease days to close or increase ACV or, a variety of other types of metrics that sales or marketing may utilize in terms of lead conversion? And so as we think about digital, one thing that I would say is making sure that you don't just use some random engagement score from your vendor's platform. You have no idea what that engagement score is actually made up of. And maybe the things that they're counting as valuable aren't the things that are actually valuable to your organization. So what I would say is first start with your sales and marketing teams. Ask them, what types of actions would you want people to take on site that would then convert quicker, or that you've heard as you're closing deals have made an impact? Is it executive meetings? Is it, going to a dinner? And so I would really figure out as an organization, what type of activities actually dictate that it would give them points towards a higher engaged lead or quality value. Because then in the digital environment, all of that data is available to us. You have to just pick the data that matters. And that's the overwhelming part, is there's thousands of data points. Yeah. And so you don't want to use them all. You want to understand your own organization. So even if you just draw a line in the sand and say, what I consider engagement is watching a minimum of 2 hours of video content, meeting with one executive, and attending one evening event. And those are just random things that I'm making up. But use that and then measure it through your marketing and sales pipeline throughout the year and understand whether it actually did make a difference. Like, do you see any trends with those accounts that took those activities? Now, this is all very data driven, and a lot of meetings professionals did not get into this industry to be a data analyst, right? So this is is where we need to partner throughout our organization to work with those that can do that, or hire consultants that can help us. We've got the data. We need to track it, and then we need to tweak it so that we can revise it for the next time around. And what I'll say from an attendee behavior standpoint that we're seeing more and more, people vote with their feet. We've always said that, but it's even more clear in a digital world. And I think that's going to translate to in-person. People are no longer going to sit in a 60-minute breakout session if the speaker sucks. They're going to get up and they're going to leave, right? And it's the same thing in our digital world. Like, I hear a lot of people concerned because they're like, people don't sit in front of content all day. I'm like, would you? Are you going to sit at your desk and literally just watch 10 hours of content straight through? No. You're going to choose the things that are most important to you, that you're most interested in. You're probably going to watch it on 1.5 or 2x speed, right? And just catch the pieces that are most important to you. And so I look at that and say, that's even better data than what we had before, because now we actually know what matters to people. And just because our keynote isn't successful, or just because we didn't see top attendance in a specific session type, that's okay. What does matter? What is it that people are doing? And what can we learn from that to create a better experience or create a better marketing campaign? So I think we have to re-peel back all the things that we've told ourselves our entire careers as marketers and really look at this data as a new way of looking at information and then utilize that.
I love that. It's really about putting that, magnifying glass on the data and getting all that the minor details that really will help make an impact with your buyers. I love that. So, you've shared a ton of great information already, but I'm just going to ask, one more time, any other best practices for planning or promoting virtual and hybrid events as we kind of start going back to this, I don't want to say new normal, but this new world.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that I would say. One is, as we go back to looking at events, I think we really need to understand that there's unique value for being digital and there's unique value to being in person. And so as marketers, we need to be very clear on the value proposition for each of those experiences and why they matter. And I think there's a lot in our industry right now saying, I just need to get back to in person. And so they're putting all their effort in person. And they're not opening up their eyes to see that there's an entire digital audience that's just as valuable. They just have different needs. So I would really encourage us to understand that parity of experiences for in-person and digital, it's not going to happen. It's not the same attending an in-person event as it is digital, and that's okay. We just need to figure out what the value proposition is and correctly sell into that for our audience. The other element you asked me earlier was how to get C-suite approval. Like, how is it that can we convince our executives that this is of value? And so it's a numbers game. If you go to them and say, I can create this great experience, everyone's going to love it, they don't care. But if you say, I can generate 10,000 new leads for our global audience, and I'm able to then curate the top 20% of our customers and prospects with unique experiences on site that we anticipate is going to influence $2 billion of revenue, you're done.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. Take it back to the numbers, understand the impact that you're able to have, both from general lead generation and the data that you can collect, as well as then what type of revenue are you able to influence in person and why those dollars are important to those experiences.
I love that. And speaking of dollars, really quick, do you think that this hybrid model will be just crazy expensive? If you're just doing a physical event, there's budget for that. And then adding on digital to that, it sounds expensive. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things. One is, a lot of the reason why people think of hybrid as super expensive is because they think they have to live stream all of their content from the in-person element to the digital audience at the same time. And so I instantly say, why? And people sort of look at me, deer in a headlight, and they're like, what do you mean, why? I need the audiences to have the content at the same time. I'm like, but why is that important? I haven't had a single person be able to tell me why it's important that they have it instantly at the same time. You could record that content and post it 4 hours later. Is there detriment to that? You could host a second Simulive session where you post the recording and have the speaker in a Q&A for your digital audience. And a lot of people say, well, I want my audiences to connect. And I would challenge that pre-COVID, we all had mobile apps, we all had Twitter, no one engaged on it. Because when you're in person, most of the time you're on Facebook during the session or you're listening to the session. You're not actually engaging. And so I look at this and say, we really need to ask ourselves the questions of where the dollars are going and what makes the highest impact. And so, yes, digital adds some cost to your expenses as you think about in person, but in some ways it doesn't. And so if you utilize a vendor, like pre-COVID, we supported in-person events, right? And then COVID hit and we were doing digital events because that's all that was there. But now post, we do both. So it's one platform, one cost. It doesn't matter where people are coming from. So you also have to look at suppliers that understand how to do both to keep your costs low so that you're not spending a bunch of money on a tech stack that doesn't make any sense. Separate mobile app for the in-person experience and, separate digital experience. And in fact, that ruins the experience for everyone because even in-person attendees are digital attendees. Before the event, they're logging in, planning their schedule, consuming content on demand. Digital has always been a part of our world. It's just more expanded now. And so as we think about cost, I think we absolutely need to think about simplifying our event technology stack. And I would also challenge you to think about what's your cost per op or cost per lead, because digitally, if you can get 10,000 versus the 1,000 you used to get with your in-person event, what's the value of those 9,000 leads? Because I'm sure your marketing team from a demand gen standpoint would go buy lists and that would be 20, 30 grand for those 9,000 names. So why not have an event where you can enrich all the data and actually have better quality leads? So again, taking it back to the dollars and the cents and really looking at cost per op, cost per lead, and how we can generate business for our organizations through the digital experience.
I love that. That's really great insights there. And I especially love, and you made such a great point, like when we're watching a session, we're watching a keynote, I'm not, at an in-person event talking to the person next to me, right? I'm not networking at that time. So that's definitely something that everybody has to think about. Shifting the conversation just a little bit, since the title of this series is CXO Conversations. So one of the questions I always make sure to include is, what types of conversations are you having with other leaders and other C-level executives in the industry? What are some top questions, some priorities, and how are stress levels changing?
Yeah. Well, wow. If we're going to talk stress levels, the last year, I think, unlike anything, across the world with all different types of people. Yeah. But in events, you can look at it in a negative or a positive light, just like most things. So a lot of times when I'm talking with executives, we turn challenges into opportunities. And right now, there is a massive opportunity for disruption. And, a lot of industries can end up being antiquated and then they've got a little bit of things going on. But the last year has completely disrupted everything in the events industry. So I think from a C-level conversation standpoint with all of my peers in the industry, it's what the hell is going on? How do we help provide a vision for the future? How do we lay out the foundation, a playbook? How do we bring our industry to a sense of calm so they feel like they can move forward? Because the more our industry is frozen, the more every company that's supporting the industry is frozen, and innovation becomes hard, growth becomes hard. And so, it really is this massive turning point within meetings and events where we have an opportunity to say there is a new way to do things, and this is how to do it, and this is how to use technology to innovate. So from a C-level position, it requires agility, strategy, being willing to try new things that may not work, but that there's assumptions that they will, and being willing to put yourself out there in the industry because everyone else is saying, let me return to the way I used to have things. And so there's very much a discussion about a boomerang effect happening, going back to in-person, not having it work, going back to digital and trying to find this medium where you just continue to go back and forth. And from a company leadership perspective, that's a hard place to be. Where do you place your bets? Where do you put your product? How do you help support your customers with something they don't need? They need something different. And so it does cause a pretty high stress level for everyone in the industry right now as we figure out what this new world looks like.
Very interesting. And I'm sure a lot of, maybe not that much, but a decent amount of alcohol is consumed to kind of help ease the pain, right?
We miss those happy hours, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Allie, thank you so much. This was awesome. My final question for you, what's next for you and what's next for Hubb?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what we just talked about, I think my heart as a meeting planner after having ran 40,000 person citywide events all the way down to executive, small 20-person events, I look at this and I say, okay, how can I use my expertise of planning from the last 20 years to really innovate what it is for the future? And so for me personally, it's a really exciting time in our industry for me to stand up and say, hey, I'm willing to make mistakes. I'm willing to say what I think and make some big bets, and some of it's going to work and some of it's not. But here's where I think we should go. And as an organization, Hubb has been growing so fast, and it's because we listen to our customers, and that's combined with vision for the future. And so for us at the organization, it's all about how do we continue to empower events to be an even bigger part of the sales and marketing teams? How do we provide the right data? How do we think about machine learning and AI and consistent year-round engagement and experiences for our audiences? So I am pretty excited about what I get an opportunity to work on and the team that I have to do it with.
Awesome. That sounds so exciting. So I look forward to seeing what other amazing things you guys do. That's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you so much, Allie. This was great. And thank you to everybody watching. That's a wrap on another episode of CXO Conversations. I will see you next time. Don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe to our series if you can, so you don't miss any new episodes. And you could always drop me a line on LinkedIn or Twitter if you want to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion on who to interview for CXO Conversations. So I will see you next time, everyone. Allie, thank you again. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.